Hello and welcome to my easy to understand guide to life on Mars and the television industry. Life on Mars is an optional TV text that some schools choose to study for the Eduqas Alevel Media Studies Component 2 exam. If you study life on Mars, you will study it alongside The Bridge, which I also have some videos for on my channel, and I'm going to be uploading some more videos about both of these programs very soon. I do also have videos about the other optional set texts as well, Humans and The Returned. Life on Mars is a British TV programme produced by Kudos Film and TV, which is a really well-known subsidiary of a massive global conglomerate, Endemol. And so that gives a certain element of quality and reputation to the programme that they were made by such a large company. They were made by Kudos for the BBC. BBC do often outsource production of dramas in particular to other companies. So they worked with Kudos so that Kudos were able to actually produce and film the show for the BBC. The BBC is a public service broadcaster. That means it is funded by the licence fee rather than by commercials and adverts. And that means that they are able to focus on content that they think is going to be informative, educational and entertaining, and they don't have to worry about it being hugely mainstream. They are not trying to please advertisers by drawing in massive audiences. It means they can afford to perhaps take some risks, do things that are a bit unusual, and maybe make some content that might be seen as a little bit more niche. Now, the BBC have a remit, which is part of their public service broadcasting contract, if you like. And part of that remit is that they have to represent areas of the UK, so regional areas. And that might explain why Life on Mars has a very strong regional branding. So lots of people and places from Manchester and other northern parts of the country. And so very much the setting and the characters and the style and tone of the programme perhaps reflective of that part of their remit. The BBC chose to schedule Life on Mars at 9 p.m, which is a kind of peak prime time slot, post-Watershed, which is often reserved for programmes that are considered to be aimed at adults. And that means they can perhaps get away with stronger content or violence, crime, swearing, etc. That you might not be able to get away with before that 9 p.m. Watershed. So the scheduling is quite important, as well as the fact that they chose to schedule it after EastEnders and Outtake TV. And those were programmes that did really quite well on the BBC. And it was also directly after them, but before the news at 10. So it's kind of hammocked in between these two very successful existing slots. So I suppose the idea is if you put a new programme in between two quite successful existing programmes, then hopefully you're hoping that your audience is going to just continue watching all the way through, and you're going to bring in some of those audiences from either the programme before or the programme after. Now, they had a variety of marketing materials for Life on Mars, so things like DVDs, posters, the soundtrack for the show, kind of trailers and teaser trailers as well. And they tried to use those marketing materials to target different audiences. So, for example, the posters had a really vintage retro feel. The style, the media language they've chosen makes them feel very old-fashioned. That would have targeted that older audience who would recognise that style as something that might be familiar with from their youth. Similarly, there were lots of intertextual references. So there was the kind of girl with the toy that we often see was a kind of BBC ident several decades ago. It would have been a recognisable reference to older content on the BBC. And so, again, targeting older audiences, making them feel nostalgic about things that used to be on TV in the past. The UK version of the DVD box set has lots of testimonials on it from UK-based companies that would be familiar to audiences in this country and would draw them in. Whereas the American version of the box set had American testimonials on it from companies like Variety and the SF Chronicles, which would have been recognisable to that more global American audience. So changing and adapting the marketing materials for different audiences. The soundtrack for the show was really good. It was featured a lot of that kind of retro vintage music from the 70s that people would have really enjoyed from their youth. And that soundtrack was used as marketing material as well, a bit of merchandise to kind of increase their revenue. And that was available on Amazon and iTunes. They got the cast and crew to do several interviews with magazines, TV guides, and that was a great way of getting audiences to learn more about the characters and the show and the narrative and what it was all about, and in the hope that that would then draw them into watching some of the episodes. Of course, the BBC also had its own webpage for Life on Mars as well, where you could watch embedded clips and videos, you could find out about episodes you'd missed and you could catch up with them, you could get teaser content about new episodes and learn more about the cast, crew and narrative and genre. The BBC even released a press pack for the show, which was a kind of questionnaire about audiences and how much they remembered from 1973, which would have piqued people's interests and would have, again, targeted those older audiences who remembered 1973. So the press pack was specifically designed to target those audiences. As the show was very successful, when they did Market Series 2, they also had t-shirts with characters on, characters that had become quite iconic by this time. And there was also a spin-off book available, which was published by Bantam Press and available on Amazon as well. And they even had a calendar. So they did have some merchandise available to try and promote the show. Lots of repetition of the BBC logo across marketing materials, and that would have felt like a kind of stamp of quality. You know, the BBC is such a well-known organisation, it would have meant that many audiences would have seen it and automatically been drawn in because they would have had experience of previous BBC TV dramas that they enjoyed. The marketing materials very much focused on several key things, promoting that genre of crime and crime detectives. You know, lots of genre signifiers making that genre clear. They had a very clear focus on some of the actors. So John Sim, who would have been familiar to a lot of BBC audiences in particular because he had starred in things like Doctor Who, which was another very big successful mainstream TV drama. So a focus on using him as a recognisable actor would have brought in pre-sold audiences. And a focus on the character of Gene Hunt as well, because he'd become quite iconic and almost comedy value. So use of his image in a lot of the marketing materials would have drawn in audiences. And the show was successful. You know, 2 series, there was a spin-off, Ashes to Ashes, as well, with a female lead character. And so it did really quite well, and it's become quite a cult TV programme over the years. There was even an American adaptation starring Harvey Keitel. The show was also remade and adapted for a variety of other countries, including Spain, South Korea, Russia and the Czech Republic. So again, kind of taking one idea, one format that's successful, and like Hesmond Haug says, repeating or copying that format to make more money from it. They broadcast the show in 14 other countries as well, so it did really, really well, and average viewing figures of about 7 million an episode, which was really quite successful when it was on TV. So Ofcom is the regulatory board for the TV industry in the UK, and they are responsible for protecting audiences from things like harmful material, offensive material, and that includes things like swearing and crime, murder, violence, sex, drugs, etc. Audiences might have complained about several things in Life on Mars, including things like violence. There was quite a lot of swearing as well in episodes, and because it's set in the 1970s, there was quite a lot of politically incorrect content, so dialogue that included lots of racism and homophobia to reflect what was really going on in the police force in Britain in the 1970s. So some audiences may have felt quite offended by that. In fact, the programme makers actually admitted in an article in The Guardian that they actually had to rewrite the character of Gene Hunt. The original script made him much more racist and homophobic, and they felt that they wanted to avoid that because they were worried about the number of complaints they might get from audiences. So they rewrote the original script to try and tone him down a bit. And that's probably one of the reasons why the BBC chose to put this drama on at 9 p.m. after The Watershed. However, you know, now we have things like the BBC iPlayer, as well as Netflix. Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes are both on Netflix at the moment. And that means that audiences can skip that schedule. They can completely watch that programme whenever they want, whether it's in the day or, you know, at night. And that means that 9 p.m. Watershed has almost become null and void. So technology and recent technology like streaming has meant the regulation of TV material is actually quite tricky. So that was my easy to understand guide to the TV industry and life on Mars. Don't forget to hit subscribe to get kept up to date every time I upload a video that might be useful to you, whether that's about life on Mars, the bridge, or any other A-level set text. And don't forget, leave a comment below if there are any videos you would like that I don't already have.